Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to the Harpin On Rugby podcast. Joining me this week is someone back for his 13th cap. I suppose we can say it was lucky for us this week. Welcome back to Mr. Hugo Gordon.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, glad to be back for this one. The last one was the Munster game, so slightly better turnout this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's turn our attention to that feature match of the week. Here's a generic 80-word summary of how things went. Leinster overcame Leicester Tigers 23-15 in the Investec Champions Cup after trailing 15-6 at half-time. Early setbacks included Tyke Furlong's withdrawal and injuries to Jack Conan and Jimmy O'Brien. Leicester struck through Adam Radwan and Ozzy Hassel-Collins, with Billy Searle adding points. Leinster rallied as Jemison Gibson-Park's try and Harry Byrne's accurate kicking narrowed the gap. Dan Sheehan's late maul try, converted by Sam Prendergast, sealed victory. Leinster's resilience and second-half dominance secured their second consecutive pool win. Obviously, we're going to go to a little bit more detail than that. And to start us off this week, Hugo wants to focus on the positives in Leinster's display on Friday night.
Yeah, I think there's going to be plenty to say on maybe what didn't work too well, but I do think it's important not to be too negative or too knee-jerk about some of this, because there were some positives to take. Obviously, first and foremost, it was a win. We came from 9 points down in the second half against the English runners-up on their own turf. And that's not nothing. And I think it is worth, saying that we were able to kind of grind it out, come back, dig deep. And I think that is worth highlighting. In the second half in particular, we definitely improved. We controlled the game. We shut Leicester out. They really weren't able to fire much of a shot in the second half at all. And a few of the things that had been going badly in the first half, I think we did see improve. The scrum improved, certainly, as we brought on the replacement front row. Our defence got on top of them. And actually, in this game overall, some things that maybe have been poor in recent games saw some improvement. So the line-out was actually pretty good. Discipline was much, much better than it had been against Quins or some of the other recent games we've had. So that was all positive. And there's a few individual really good performances. Maybe focusing on Reiko Ioane first, as it was his first start. And a few people, I think, after the game said that they felt he was quite anonymous. And it certainly wasn't a very flashy performance, but I actually thought he was very good on rewatch. Very industrious, carried really hard. He was one of the few players who was really able to give us reliable momentum in that first half. His defence throughout was good. His kick chase in the last 20 after Prendergast came on, and he was a big reason why we were able to keep Leicester pegged back in that final stage of the game. It seemed to be always him kind of chasing down the fullback. So I thought it was a good first start. As I said, nothing really for the highlight reel, but an impressive performance overall, and hopefully he'll continue to make an impact, particularly if Gary Ringrose does miss many more games. The other one was Joe McCarthy, obviously player of the match on the day. We've really missed his physicality while he's been out injured. Made a big impact around the park. He's a menace at ruck time. He was carrying hard, and that kind of physicality is something that I think Leinster have struggled without a little bit in some of these opening rounds. Jemison Gibson-Park, I thought, was another one who could very well have won player of the match. Very good controlled game, helped us settle down when we needed a little bit, when we were getting a little bit rattled. And his try, not only just very quick thinking, but also did really well to hold off 3 tackles. I thought he played very well. And then Tommy O'Brien, again, he's had such a strong start to the season, and he really did everything but score yesterday. He had a couple of moments where it just didn't quite come off for him. He could easily have come away with 2 or 3, but he was very lively. He's very visible. He comes off the wing a lot. He's just such a kind of presence in attack and defence for Leinster, and he's really made that shirt his own. It's hard to kind of imagine a Leinster squad without him these days, which, given the years of poor injuries and issues he had, was very positive. So I think there were some good things there, and we'll talk to maybe some of the issues shortly, but I think it is worth pointing out that it was there were some good things there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been taking a lot of stick as Leinster fans, kind of on the social, that we're kind of whining about poor results. But I mean, for Leinster, 3 defeats out of 4 in the early stages of the season, and the way results have gone and the performances haven't been what we've expected. I think we're kind of entitled to point things out. So, while on last week's pod, the win over Quins, myself and Tom, tried to be positive as well in this part of the pod, looking at the way we were attacking. The attack strategy we had, the kicking game, the way we had creative players at 10, 12, and 13, looking to move the ball quickly to the wings. We were hoping to be positive and bring that forward. But then this week we picked a completely different 10, 12, 13, 3 completely different players who play a completely different way, like to take the ball to the line, like to bring it into contact. And it was a different way. And in those early stages, it wasn't working really so well. And we did have that opportunity in the first few seconds. Tommy O'Brien's try from that clever lineup move. It's just Robbie moved just that little bit too early. But if that had worked, it probably would have settled us a lot more. But as Leicester grew into that first quarter, they just kind of grew in confidence. So I suppose it's natural that given the negativity we're bringing into it, being behind on the scoreboard at halftime for any reason, you couldn't blame the defense the way that try ended up scoring. It was just a loose ball that was hacked and got great bounces down the field. He deserved those bounces. It was a great bit of football skills up the line to get that try. But considering how it was, I suppose we could be forgiven for sort of being negative. But like you say, the way we sort of ground out that second half and just literally camped ourselves in their half for pretty much the entire. I think they had one sort of half decent spell where they looked like they could have scored in that second half, but the rest of the time they just couldn't escape for love nor money. We just kept them pinned down there, and even though we didn't always score, the attack still wasn't always working. We made our own luck to get that Gibson Park try, and then finished it off well. Got that bit of distance as well to see it home. So there was definitely encouraging elements to it.
Yeah, there was a patch, I think, around the hour mark. It was really the only time they had any kind of concerted ball in that second half. And actually, if you look back and watch it again, our defense during that patch is really, really good. They really do some good things in attack during those moments. It's kind of the only thing they really do in that half. And it would have been very easy to give up points there, and we didn't. And that was pleasing. And yeah, I think kind of it's we'll talk about some of the defensive issues that we have seen shortly, and that was nice to see. Clearly, there is still some solidity left in this team, and just hopefully we just see it a bit more often than we have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, when you consider, as I said in that summary, we had that adversity, I suppose you could call it, going into the game, losing Ty Furlong just before the kickoff, and having to make changes there, but also losing Conan and O'Brien. Conan had that he did slip into that. It was a rugby incident in the end. It didn't look good at first, and it was in the first couple of minutes of Freddie Stewart. But then of course you had O'Brien limping off as well. But we did kind of fight back. We were making good decisions at times. Again, when our attacks were breaking down, we were putting the boot to ball at the wrong times. And I think like Gibson Park had 2 blocks in one sequence. That just wasn't happening. But we were taking the 3 points, which is something that we've always given out, especially away from home in big tight matches. We weren't taking those threes. This time we were, and it did help us, kept us within striking distance. So that was good. So yeah, definitely a lot of positives there for sure. Okay, well, elsewhere in the Investec Champions Cup, although Gloucester led 3-0 up to the end of the first quarter, Munster eventually bounced back from their disappointment in the wreck last week to record a bonus point win that puts them right back in Pool 2 contention, where all 6 clubs now have 1 win and 1 loss. In Leinster's Pool 4, the Stormers continued their 100% start to the season in both competitions, which means we share the lead in the pool with them as we're both on 9 points. There were also wins for reigning champions Bordeaux, as well as Castres, Harlequins, Northampton, Toulon, Bristol, both the English and South African Sharks, and most notably Glasgow, who fought back to defeat Toulouse at Scottstown. In the Challenge Cup, a late scrum penalty allowed Cardiff to edge out Ulster, while Connacht bounced back from last week's defeat with a 52-0 win in Galway over Georgia's Black Lion. But now we must return to Leicester on Friday, and while as Leinster fans we prefer to find positives in the performances, it certainly hasn't been all plain sailing this season, and we certainly saw some worrying trends continue on Friday, Hugo.
Yeah, and as much as we do want to highlight the positives, as much as the negatives, there were some issues that we do unfortunately need to talk about. This is another game where we were really we looked a few percent off really where we need to be and where we have been in previous years. First half, I mean, you mentioned we did kind of start brightly, and maybe if we had scored that early try, things would have gone different. But the first half was a bit of a mess. And if you ever want proof that stats don't win games, just look at the stats in that first half, because all the numbers would have told you we were dominating that game. We had 3 times as many clean breaks, 3 times as many carries, 8 times as many defenders beaten. We had twice as much possession in territory. We had 5 times as many meters made. They only made 39 meters in the entire first half. And yet we went in 15-6 down, which was a bit of a hard one to take. You mentioned, I mean, Furlong pulling out in the build up, and then we had 2 players have to go off within the first 15 minutes, Conan and Jimmy O'Brien. And, so there was some disruption there, and that won't have helped things. And you're right that the 2 tries they scored were a little bit fluky. They were, there was a loose ball that Radwan pounced on and then played some lovely football to get down to the other end and score. And then a bit of kind of just unlucky ricochet of a ball which James Lowe wasn't quite able to take in, that allowed Hassel Collins then to pounce on just at the end of the first half. But I think if it was just this game, you'd say, oh, well, it happens. The reality is a failure to turn possession into points and a tendency to concede soft tries is becoming a real theme of Leinster's season. I mean, you look at the stats and had a few more final passes gone to hand last night, had a few more balls stayed in hand rather than being knocked on, we'd have won comfortably. There was 3 or 4 tries that we kind of left out there last night. We definitely in that sense left a bonus point out there. And again, sometimes you just have those games, but it is becoming a bit of a problem. Our accuracy in attack does seem to be deserting us a little bit this season. You look back to the Munster game, where we had plenty of chances to win that game and just couldn't make any of them count. Lots of knock-ons again yesterday, lots of loose passing, some really loose passing at times. And just there is a bit of a sense that for all the fact that we have had a lot of the ball this season, we don't seem to really be able to make it count the way we would have a couple of seasons ago. And when you combine that with some of the defensive issues, that leads to some trouble. I think defense has been really where my particular disappointment has been. Bar a couple of meltdown games last season, most famously or infamously against Saints, we actually had the best defense in Europe last season. We conceded very, very few points last season. This season has been not just kind of going back a little bit, it's been actively bad at times. After 6 games in the URC, we've conceded 48% as many points as we did in all 21 URC games last season. We got 47% as many points in 2 European games conceded as we did in 7 last season. So it is drastically worse. And while, you can say, okay, well, a couple of fluky tries, but we seem to be conceding a lot of those fluky tries. We had a couple against Quins that just kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. Stormers and Bulls carved us up in the first couple of games, a couple against Munster as well, where we do seem to struggle on transition. We seem to struggle when teams can get the ball wide quickly. And I think a few of the weaknesses that were there last season, I think teams have found ways to exploit. So hopefully this can be fixed over time. We're not going to go very far in Europe against stronger teams. And with all due respect to Leicester Tigers, who are a good team, but they're not the strongest team in Europe. And the Quins B side we beat last week certainly weren't the strongest side. So we're not going to, we've won these games, but we're not going to keep winning these games against stronger teams if we continue to fail to take our chances when they're there and concede so easily. So one of the reasons why I was pleased about that second half defensive performance, again, it's proof that the solidity is there, but we just need to cut out those kind of soft concessions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Kino in our WhatsApp group who just basically simply said it's that 1%. That's been missing. I mean, you look back over the performance and go, well, if this kick hadn't gone out in the full, if this one pass hadn't been dropped, if Robbie Henshaw had waited one more second to step forward after that line out, all this kind of stuff. And each individual case you go, oh yeah. There's just maybe 1% in it. But when you add them together and you're looking at a team that you're expecting to compete in both trophies, one of the few teams on the continent who you feel that can compete in both trophies, those are the kind of things that have to stick. And this is the reason why Leinster fans tend to be more critical and more sort of demanding of the standards, simply because we know that they're the standards that the players themselves want. And anyone that's gone in there, you talk to Jordy Barris, who was there last season. He was impressed because he going around training sessions, the standards that were expected, even at the training session. It was just a level up maybe from or a level the same when he's used to playing with the All Blacks. That kind of mentality of demanding kind of excellence and stuff. So when it's not happening, that's when other teams are going to have a chance. And yeah, I agree that the defense isn't what it should be. I mean, you look at our opening to the season, I still think that we weren't properly prepared going to the first URC game. I don't think anyone was surprised that we lose against Stormers, but just the way we lost to them getting nilled and just absolutely hockeyed out of it. That put us on the back foot, especially points difference wise. But I think that in these last couple of weeks, you look at the tries we've conceded, they've been mostly mistakes at the other end. It's a compounding of not being able to score at one end, just the other team just getting it going down the other end. I mean, even the try, even though it was a sort of a kick pass that bounced in the corner, the reason Leicester had that try at the end of the first half is because we were on their line and had a scrum and shipped a penalty, and that helped them down to the other end. It was kind of our failure to turn those attacking situations into tries like we've been used to. So it is definitely a worry. It's something that we're going to have to be fixed. We got, big matches coming up, 2 big interprovincials, then the other 2 matches in this pool where if we're sort of neck and neck with the Stormers for that top spot, we're going to try to get at least a top 4 finish in the overall seeding. So there's a lot to play for, and we're going to have to continue that. But I think I don't think it's an impossible situation. I think it is. I mean, you do think it is something fixable. It's something that we can do over the coming weeks.
Yeah, I believe it must be because the level off where we have been compared to where we were at the tail end of last season. We know these players can do it because we've seen them do it. The kind of the strange thing for me is why we look a bit like we did a couple of seasons ago when we were kind of maybe making some changes within the squad. We were changing how we played, and so you expected at that point that there might be some kind of teething pains. This feels like it should be a more settled squad now, which is part of the reason why it's been a little bit frustrating to see. This wouldn't be the first time we've started slowly in a recent European season, only to kind of grow into it. We actually, we didn't have a very strong start to Europe last season. Kind of struggled through games with Claremont and Bristol before kind of finding our feet, and then looking much, much sharper when the knockouts came around, at least until the semi-final. So I think it is fixable, but it has to be. You mentioned, we're neck and neck with the Stormers. The Stormers are in a very good position to win this pool ahead of us.
And we won't even get a chance to play them.
Exactly. We can't stop them from doing that. So all we can do at this stage is try and run up our own points difference at this stage. We need wins, and we realistically probably need bonus point wins in our 2 remaining games. And that includes, a couple of very tough games, particularly potentially an away game against Bayonne, where Bayonne don't lose at home very often. My slight hope is they will be so far out of the tournament running by that stage that they'll be a bit disinterested, but none of these are easy games, and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves now to kind of really have to try and play catch up with Stormers. So hopefully we'll get it done. But yeah, there is a lot of pressure on these upcoming games, I think, more so than maybe we've seen in a few years with this team.
Yeah, and I think that maybe one element that sort of almost proves one of the theories as to why Leinster have had such a slow start. I mean, I'm reluctant to harp on this too much because it sounds just like an excuse, but we talked about the Lions tour and the fact and how many Leinster players were involved in that, and just the fact that Joe McCarthy himself was player of the match here and how much he was needed. And if you look at some of those games we lost in those early weeks, you definitely see a Joe McCarthy shaped hole in Leinster's performance. You needed his kind of display, the kind of display he produced in Leicester on Friday. So it is a factor. It's great to have him back. We had James Ryan as well. We had as well as a completely different center pairing. We had a different second row. We had a change to our second row as well. We had James Ryan back slotting in for Arhe Snyman. So having these players back in the team is definitely a plus. I mean, I know we are losing them as well, but it's just overall, it's just a question of having the right players in for the right performances. But Joe definitely got things right on Friday.
Yeah, we just need to. We have got a few big injuries in a few key positions now. Losing a kind of another second row would really start to cause us problems. We've obviously got, with Jimmy O'Brien now potentially injured, fullback is becoming a bit of a problem position again. So hopefully we can keep people fit over Christmas. Because we're already missing a few faces. A few of the faces who are there look a little bit tired. So if we could just kind of get everyone through Christmas period relatively unscathed for January.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. Okay, so we had some reaction, of course, on our Facebook page, starting with Derek Kennedy, who said simply, quote, "An away win in Welford Road, I'll take that. Someone else can try to gather up some negatives," end quote. And that happened to be a challenge that was gratefully accepted by Greg Kelly, who says, quote, Leinster's poor attack and sloppy execution continues. You wonder what's really going on. We were the better team overall, and they never really looked like scoring in the second half, but our attack was woefully sloppy, end quote. Do you agree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, if you want to get involved in the conversation yourself, head over to our Facebook page after the full-time whistle in Leinster and Ireland matches, and feel free to leave your thoughts. Okay, well, look, we're going to leave it there for now. Many thanks to Hugo for joining us, and looking forward to having you back on again soon. Thanks, man.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
And as ever, be sure to stay tuned to Harpin On Rugby on all the socials during the week, starting with our bonus chat posting on YouTube Tuesday, where we'll be harping on the rise and rise of Paddy McCarthy this season. Then our 80-plus column, where we try to look at the wider rugby world, and that post every Wednesday over on Substack. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán. Hi, it's Jeff Pagano here, just putting in a little extra content to the pod there. I spoke there of our bonus chat, and since our wrap pod this week was a little shorter than usual, I thought I'd sort of put a bit extra at the end by giving you a little sample of that bonus chat. Like I say, we were speaking about Paddy McCarthy, so here's the first couple of minutes from that video, but it'll be released in full on our YouTube channel on Tuesday, so look out for it then. Here it is. Hi there. Welcome to our latest bonus chat. If you missed our podcast looking back at Leicester Tigers v Leinster, be sure to check it out on Apple, Spotify, and all the other usual places. Now, every time a new season rolls around, we spend ages on our podcast trying to work out how the new campaign is going to go. But often, one thing we can't account for in our predictions is new players having a breakthrough season. And someone who definitely fits that bill for both Leinster and Ireland this season is a certain Mr. Paddy McCarthy. He's having quite the time of it so far, isn't he, Hugo?
Yeah, he's had a really impressive start to this season. He's always, he was looked very impressive at underage level. I think we knew that he was going to be a potential big name for Leinster and Ireland going forward if he could keep that going. But he's only had 6 senior Leinster games before the season, comprising 135 minutes total, I think. So he's not been someone who's necessarily featured particularly prominently for Leinster before this season. I thought we'd see more of him this season. I didn't think he'd make this big an impact. He's had 6 games for Leinster this season already. He started 5 of them, and that includes 2 European starts where he has broadly acquitted himself very well. And obviously there's the 4 games for the national side as well. And what a kind of meteoric rise he's had there. He's supplanted Jack Boyle, seemingly as the clear backup to Andrew Porter. He's played against the All Blacks in South Africa, and he seems to be the kind of the guy picked out for the future, really, by Andy Farrell and his coaching setup, which is not bad for a 22-year-old who's only in his second year out of the academy. There are still areas, for a position where people often only hit their prime in their 30s and where technique and kind of a bit of experience is maybe more important than in any other position on the pitch. And there's still areas where I think, he just does need more time. And he's not yet a particularly strong scrummager. He was given a tough time by Joe Hayes in the scrum on Saturday. And I think, that's what happens when you've got relatively inexperienced props up against people with a bit more nous and experience behind them. But that game also showed what he does do very well already. He's so powerful and mobile around the park. He hits rucks. He made some really good hard carries in the time that he was on the pitch. And again, just incredibly visible. Sometimes forwards, and this is not a criticism because there's so much of that kind of, famously the unseen work that forwards need to do. But quite often props can kind of disappear amidst the, just a wider kind of game going on. And you only really notice them around scrum time, whereas that's not true of Paddy McCarthy. He's so visible, so prominent, so kind of committed and engaged around the pitch. And that's really important to how Leinster play. It's similar to how Andrew Porter plays. And so he's a very exciting player. Hopefully he continues on this trajectory. Obviously he's still very, very young and there's plenty of time really to kind of tell whether he does carry on this form. But it is incredibly important, particularly given Ireland's relative lack of depth at prop. This has been something that both Ireland and Leinster have had an issue for a long time. And we've really struggled to find a kind of a high quality loose head to replace Cian Healy and to back up Andrew Porter. We've been very reliant on Porter for a long time, too reliant on Porter. And the emergence of McCarthy, alongside some of the other great young props coming through, hopefully signals that we have got some wider options coming through. But we did just, yeah, I did just want to flag Paddy McCarthy really, because over the course of what has been, maybe not the best start to the season from Leinster, there's a few players who've really stood out, and he's been one of them. It's been really impressive to watch and very exciting to watch.